In an age of forgotten kings and whispered legends, two kingdoms stood on the brink of war. Vesperia, the land of twilight, was ruled by the iron will of a king whose only softness was his daughter, Princess Alara. In the neighboring kingdom of Aurelia, the land of dawn, a young knight, Sir Calin, was celebrated for his courage, his sword sworn to defend his people against the encroaching shadows of Vesperia. Their rivalry was as old as the mountains that separated them, a simmering animosity fanned by generations of mistrust. The people of both lands lived under the constant threat of a conflict that seemed inevitable, a storm gathering on the horizon that promised to shatter their world. Alara was no ordinary princess. While others learned the delicate arts of the court, she studied ancient texts, seeking knowledge of a forgotten magic she believed could bring lasting peace. She saw the futility in her father's endless preparations for war, the stockpiling of weapons and the training of soldiers. She knew that true strength lay not in steel, but in understanding. Night after night, she would sneak into the royal library, her fingers tracing the faded symbols of a power that promised to mend rather than break. She dreamed of a world where Vesperia and Aurelia were not enemies but allies, their combined strength a beacon of hope for all. Meanwhile, Calin, the pride of Aurelia, felt a growing unease. He had won countless tourneys and was hailed as the kingdom's greatest champion, yet the cheers of the crowd felt hollow. He saw the faces of his people etched with worry, and the fear in the eyes of the young squires who looked up to him. He questioned the glory of a war that would cost so many lives, patrolling the borderlands. He often gazed across the valley towards the dark spires of Vesperia's capital, wondering if the people there were so different from his own. He began to see the conflict not as a matter of honor, but as a tragic failure of diplomacy, a path leading only to sorrow. Then, the unthinkable happened. It began not with the clash of armies, but with a flicker of orange against the night sky. A mysterious fire, born of no earthly flame, descended upon both kingdoms simultaneously. It moved with a malevolent intelligence, consuming stone and steel as if they were dry tinder. Panic erupted in the streets of Vesperia's capital. The great castle, which had stood for 1,000 years, was engulfed in a torrent of unnatural violet-tinged flames. Alara watched in horror from her balcony as her home, her world, turned to ash. The guards, the courtiers, her own father-all, were lost in the inferno. Miles away, in Aurelia, the same cataclysm unfolded. The golden towers of the city crumbled under the assault of the relentless fire. Calin fought with desperate bravery, pulling families from burning homes, his armor scorched, his lungs filled with smoke. But it was a battle he could not win. The fire was an unstoppable force of nature, a living entity of pure destruction. He saw his king fall, his comrades consumed by the blaze. He was the last knight standing in a city of ghosts, the glorious kingdom of Aurelia reduced to a smoldering ruin. The age of kings was over, ended not by war, but by a silent, fiery apocalypse. Driven from the ruins of their respective capitals, Alara and Calin were the sole high-born survivors of their worlds. Alara, clutching a single fire-resistant tome she had managed to save from the library, journeyed into the ash-covered wilderness. Calin, his shining armor now black and indented, his heart heavy with grief, wandered aimlessly, a kingless knight in a dead land. The world was now a monochrome landscape of gray and black, the sun a dim orange smudge behind a perpetual veil of smoke. The air was thick with the ghosts of what was lost, the scent of a world burned away. Fate, or perhaps a design far older than their kingdoms, brought them together. In a petrified forest, where the trees stood like charcoal skeletons, their paths crossed. They saw each other not as princess and knight, not as enemies, but as two lonely souls adrift in a sea of desolation. The sigils on their tattered clothes, the last remnants of their former lives, were meaningless now. All that mattered was the shared sorrow in their eyes, the mutual recognition of profound world-shattering loss. Without a word, they knew they were no longer Vesperian and Aurelian. They were simply survivors. Together, they decided to journey onward, seeking the source of the fire, hoping for answers, or at the very least, a place untouched by the devastation. They traveled through valleys of glass, where sand had been melted and fused, and across plains of ash that stretched to the horizon. They shared what little food they could scavenge, protected each other from mutated creatures warped by the magical fire, and at night huddled together for warmth against the chilling winds that swept through the Deadlands. Kellen's strength protected them, and Elara's knowledge guided them. The book she had saved spoke of a heartfire, an elemental force that could be both creator and destroyer. Their journey was a pilgrimage through memory and grief. Elara spoke of the gardens of Vesperia, where moon-petal flowers bloomed only in the twilight. Kellen described the sun-drenched markets of Aurelia, filled with laughter and song. They mourned not just their families and friends, but the very cultures that had defined them. In sharing their stories, they began to build a bridge across the chasm of their old enmity. They discovered that their hopes and fears had always been the same. They were two sides of a single coin, their rivalry a tragic misunderstanding orchestrated by the pride of kings. As they traveled, the fire, which had been a distant smoldering presence, began to close in again. The horizon glowed with a renewed, menacing light. It was hunting them, drawn to them, the last vestiges of the old world's magic. The Heartfire, as Ilara's book described, was drawn to sources of potent life and emotion. Their own powerful grief, their will to survive, and the budding connection between them acted as a beacon. They realized they could not outrun it. Their final stand would have to be here, in the heart of the wasteland. They found a small, sheltered crater, a bowl in the ashen earth, and prepared for the end. As the wall of fire approached, a roaring, sentient tsunami of flame, Kellen stood before Elara, his sword drawn not in aggression, but in a final defiant gesture of protection. He was no longer a knight of Aurelia, but her knight. Elara, in turn, opened the ancient tome, her voice clear and steady as she recited a forgotten incantation, a chant not of command, but of connection, of empathy. It was a plea to the very essence of the Heartfire. She wasn't trying to extinguish it, but to understand it, to soothe its rage. She poured all of her hope, her grief, and her newfound love for the man standing before her into the words. In that climactic moment, something extraordinary happened. As Elara's magic touched the fire and Kellen's resolve held firm, their feelings for each other, love forged in apocalypse, pure and absolute crystallized. It erupted from them as a tangible force, a soft silver light that pulsed outwards. When this light met the raging inferno, the fire did not retreat. Instead, it was transformed. The violent, destructive flames calmed, their colors softening from angry violet to a gentle gold and rose. The fire parted around the crater, flowing past them like a river around a stone, leaving them untouched. A perfect sanctuary of peace was created in the very heart of destruction. Their love had not defeated the fire. It had harmonized with it. As the last of the fire passed, a profound silence fell over the world. The smoke began to clear for the first time in what felt like an eternity. A single pure ray of sunlight broke through the haze, illuminating the crater. Looking out, they saw not a world of ash, but a world cleansed. The fire had burned away the old, the corrupt, the hateful. The land, though charred, felt fertile, ready for new life. From the center of their sanctuary, a single green sprout pushed its way through the soot. It was a new dawn, not just for the day, but for the world. Together, Elara and Kellen, the last princess and the last knight, stood hand in hand, ready to build a new world from the embers of the old. Their story would not be one of rival kingdoms, but of a love that turned apocalypse into a new beginning. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales from worlds beyond imagination.